Hey everyone! Before we open today's file, please make sure to follow us on Instagram at d.s.radio, where you can find all the images that go along with today's case. You can drop us an email at contact.dsradio@gmail.com. You can find all of our socials in the Linktree bio on our Instagram profile, including links to merch. If you're feeling especially generous, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio, where you can get access to our exclusive Instagram page and make suggestions for upcoming episode topics that you would like us to cover. Speaking of Patreon, thanks to our Patreons, Riff Cult, Cropley Crab, Cash Broadus, Raspberry Jr., Jason R. Nelson, Creepy Paper, Jamie Sook, Michael Laughlin, Lindsay Keller, Mike Wright, Greer Weaver, Kelsey Carruthers, Linz Gibbon, Drake Holvig, Only Child, Michael M, Wesley Akers, Riaz K, Emily Medeiros, Pip, Heather Wynn, Graves, Devon Sweatshirt, The Ordained Sinister Minister, and Philip Hoffman.
Hi everybody and welcome to Dystopian Simulation Radio. My name's Chris.
I'm Linz.
And we are here to open up a new case for you today. But just before we do, Linz, how are you?
Good. Can't complain.
Been to any cannibal museums recently?
Just one or two. Yeah, hot off the heels of the last episode, interviewing the owner of a cannibal museum. So if you haven't checked that out, go back and check it out. It's the last episode.
It is, and you can find all the visuals on our Instagram at d.s.radio. And if you really enjoy the podcast and you want more of this shit, then you can...
More of this shit, more of us, more behind the scenes stuff, you know.
You can head over to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio, and you can find all the information on there. Get yourself either a £1 or a £5 level and get all the lovely associated benefits that you can with that. However, before we get started with today's files, Linz,
yes,
I would like to give you an update on a previous episode and a breadcrumb. So firstly, the breadcrumb. Linz, I've got a very important question to ask you.
Oh, God.
But not until the end of today's episode.
Damn it, why do you do this to me?
So make sure that you stay here until the end to hear
I
that
have
special.
to stay here.
Well, you do, but they don't.
I know.
I mean, they do. Yes, you do. Once you pop, you can't stop.
Okay.
So the update is actually to our episode, which you can find in the archives, Is Russia Training Spy Whales? It now unfortunately appears that the Dolphin training ground in Crimea has deployed its marine agents to protect the Black Sea in the ongoing war in Ukraine. This was sent to me by our listener Tom, who sent over a BBC article, which you can read for yourself if you just Google Crimea Dolphins Ukraine. If you've got any articles that follow up on any of our stories, or you've got any kind of additional information, please send them over to our email address, which is contact.dsradio@gmail.com, or just drop us a DM on our Instagram at d.s.radio. So yeah, that's just a little bit of an update. So sorry to bury the lead, but the question is Russia training spy whales? Yes.
And deploying them.
So Linz.
Chris.
Today we are getting back to the true origin of our podcast.
Spooky.
Ooh. I love spooky. It's been a while. Been a while since we've had any demonic possessions and hauntings around.
Well, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today, a haunting.
Hell yeah.
Like Agent Mulder, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, according to our last Q&A episode, I've been up all night quite literally. Thank you very much, son. And I have uncovered quite the haunting. But a question. When might a haunting double up as a money-making opportunity?
When you turn your haunted house into a haunted house attraction?
I mean, that's one way of making some money off it.
When you're being haunted by the ghost of a stockbroker or a Wall Street man.
You are like so close to the answer, and then you just veered off into...
When you're haunted by the ghost of a billionaire. You're haunted by the ghost of a celebrity.
Yes.
Yes. What do I win?
To be on a podcast.
Oh, yes.
So if you could be haunted by any celebrity, who would you be haunted by?
Frank Sinatra.
Why?
Well, he's probably got a lot of good stories. He could, like, sing to me when I was having panic attacks. I don't know. I don't know. I think I can't think of any dead celebrities I'd like to be haunted by. Oh my God, Michael Jackson.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
It's a really difficult question to answer. I think it would be like a living celebrity, so I'd have to kill them and then they'd have to haunt me. So I don't want blood on my hands, so I'm just going to stick with Frank Sinatra.
See, I think I'd quite like to be haunted by the ghost of Marlon Brando. I think we could have a great time, just sort of, hanging out, eating ourselves silly and talking in husky voices.
Stella? Yeah.
Honestly, what can I say tonight? I'm feeling very chickeny.
Oh, James Dean. I'd choose James Dean.
Well, we're not talking about the ghost of James Dean today.
Boo. Or boo.
Whee! However, ghosts are, by their very nature, quite elusive. But surely a celebrity ghost would be quite easy to find, right? I mean, they love the spotlight. Tupac showed up at a concert a few years ago, very publicly, for example.
What?
I mean, they called it a hologram, but it was clearly a ghost.
Oh, I see where you're going with that. I was like, the ghost of Tupac was at a concert. That's a very niche story. Where did you find that? The Daily Mail.
Page 3.
Oh, God.
Perhaps the most famous celebrity ghost is that of a politician. Good old Honest Abe himself, Abraham Lincoln, who reportedly haunts... Any guesses?
Mind has gone blank.
Blank is a word for it in another language.
The void?
The White House.
Oh my gosh. Of all the places.
Of all the places. So today we're going to be talking about the curious case of Abraham Lincoln's ghost. Ooh. I'd like to credit the Washington Post, Whitehouse History, and especially American Hauntings in my research, who are very, very helpful in putting these pieces together. So Linz, bearing in mind that our biggest audience is in the USA, according to the latest statistics, tell us in a couple of sentences, who was Abraham Lincoln?
A very nice man.
That's one sentence.
That'll do.
He was actually the 16th president of the United States and led the country through a little event called the American Civil War. I don't know if you've heard of it. He abolished slavery and also had a sweet beard that no president has dared wear again.
See? Very nice man.
He's often considered to be the greatest American president, although I simp for William Taft and his sweet mustache. Check that out.
Thick boy.
So Lincoln was, of course, assassinated in 1865 in Ford's Theatre in Washington, D.C., while he was watching a performance of Our American Cousin. John Wilkes Booth, a famous actor who was not performing in that evening's play, entered the presidential box and shot Lincoln in the back of his head, mortally wounding the president and ushering in the 17th president the next day when he succumbed to his wounds. Lincoln's story does not end there, though. Oh no. But before I tell you where it goes, let me just veer off course for a second. Now, I have actually skipped over Lincoln's greatest achievement. Did you know that Honest Abe was a wrestler?
Oh, God. No.
Now, he's not in the WWE Hall of Fame. Only one president is.
Chris.
Any guesses?
Oh, God, who could that be? I don't know. No clue.
It's Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah, he's... Yeah.
You have really gone like a completely different direction. I was like thinking, oh, we're getting a little history haunting here. Straight to wrestling.
Yep. Now, Lincon is actually in the Amateur Wrestling Hall of Fame, not for fighting on Olympic mats in the modern sense, but out in the woods with men and mustaches and moose. Lincon was supposedly nearly undefeated in over 300 bouts in 12 years. Who was the man that defeated him? Theodore Roosevelt. No, not really.
Oh.
it was some dude named Hank Thompson. Now, in one recorded victory, Lincon proclaimed the following. Linz, I would like you to read this in your very best pro wrestler voice.
Oh my God. I'm the big buck of this lick. If any of you want to come and try it, come on and wet your horns. What the fuck?
That is an actual quote from the president.
Oh gosh, I had to read it before I read it. I just couldn't do it. What? There'll be no wetting of horns here, sir.
So Lincon was very big on the carny stuff as well, so no wonder he shares a Hall of Fame with Kurt Angle. Oh, it's true. It's true. Anyway, back to the story. So Lincon actually foresaw his own death. And if you believe Ward Hill Lamon, who was a very close friend of the president, he wrote that Lincon said, should I do an American voice? I don't know what Lincon sounded like.
He sounded a bit like this.
About 10 days ago, I retired very late.
Why are you the Tiger King? All right.
About 10 days ago, I retired very late. I soon began to dream. There seemed to be a death-like stillness about. Then I heard subdued sobs, as if a number of people were weeping. I thought I had left my bed and wandered downstairs. I arrived in the East Room. Before me was a catafalque on which rested a corpse, wrapped in funeral vestments. Around it were stationed soldiers who were acting as guards, and there was a throng of people, some gazing mournfully upon the corpse whose face covered, others weeping pitifully. "Who is dead in the Whitehouse?" I demanded of one of the soldiers. The president was his answer. He was killed by an assassin. I went very southern on that last bit there.
That was good.
An assassin.
An assassin, you say?
Eerily, in another incident, Lincon called an emergency meeting of his cabinet and said, "Expect important news soon. I've had a dream. I am on a boat, alone, in the ocean. I have no oars, no rudder. I am helpless." He was assassinated that very evening.
What? That's so cool.
Lincon even saw ghosts himself in the White House, specifically of his son Willie, who died at the age of 12 of typhoid fever. Now, Lincon was not a spiritual man to begin with, but then he married Mary Todd Lincon, who was, to put it nicely, a bit of a kook.
Cuckoo coffee.
After the death of their son Willie at just 11, Mary Todd gravitated towards spiritualism and held seances in the White House to help with her grief. Lincon attended a few of these sessions himself, but never fully committed to it in the same way that his wife did. Mary Todd experienced a large amount of tragedy in her life. 3 of her and Abraham's children didn't survive until adulthood, and she was sat right next to her husband as he was assassinated. So it's not out of the realms of possibility that she may have moved towards the supernatural to help her cope. She was, in fact, actually committed to an institution for a time by her only surviving son. One of her most famous incidents was a visit to William Mumler's photography studio in 1872. Mumler claimed to be able to take photographs of spirits and provided this image to Mary Todd Lincon. Now, Linz, you know a thing or two about photography.
Sorry.
What do you think of this image and how was it achieved?
Just double plates, I guess. Shining a lot of light through the actual figure in the picture, and then less on the ghost on the back. I mean, as you can see, the hands on the shoulders look very solid, tangible. He looks kind of naked.
Yeah.
The ghost.
It does. I mean, it's essentially an image of Mary Todd Lincoln with supposedly the ghost of her husband standing behind her with his hands on her shoulders.
Yes, but it doesn't appear to really look... It's a very strange image. I think it's meant to be comforting and nice and gentle.
It was supposed to let the people know that kind of the spirits of the departed were still with the loved ones.
Yeah, but it's also like proportionally kind of wrong too.
So double exposure, more or less, is easy to spot today with our vision. But this was a cutting-edge technology back in the day, and nobody had the faintest idea how this had been achieved.
Yes.
Until Momna was put on trial. And it turned out that his wife was a medium who recommended to those who had come and visit her and wanted to speak to spirits to go and visit her friend, William, who could photograph their loved ones again.
That's terrible. I like running the scam on these, like, grieving people.
Spirit photography is a big thing, though.
Yeah, it was huge. Absolutely huge. Especially at seances and things, you know, where they'd do the ectoplasm, which is basically just a cloth coming out of someone's nose, but they were like, oh my gosh, wow. Like, I can see why they believed it, like, because that would be quite shocking. Like, even back when, you know, you were just using, like, disposable cameras and stuff, sometimes you'd get, like, a double exposure back. And I remember one time we got, after my grandma died, we got a picture back, and it was, like, a picture of, I think it was a party, because we were kids. And then she had been, like, something had gone wrong, like, in the development stage. And my grandma was, like, double exposed onto the picture, like in the foreground. And it was like kind of red, like it had a weird tint to it. And it was like accidentally one of these
That's
quotes.
cool.
But yeah, it was, I remember like we looked at it and it kind of like, it was quite jarring. And I remember, I think we put it in the kitchen drawer and we shut the drawer and we just never really looked at it again.
You opened that drawer since?
Oh, that, you know, it's like a plastic bag drawer. So God knows what's in there. But yeah, I can see why, especially when you're in a vulnerable time, you know, you've lost someone close to you and you see it and you freak out for a minute, not because you believe in it, but in the moment, you will, or you hope to believe in it. But I'm sorry, that Abe Lincoln picture is a little bit funny. He looks naked and small and...
How big was Lincoln?
No, I mean, he looks like not like a human-sized person, like he's a small figure in the...
Yeah.
The perspective is strange.
Yeah, no, it's all off, but...
It'll be on the Instagram, diva.s.radio, if you want to take a look at it and tell us what you think.
So this photograph is clearly fake.
Yes.
But what about the real, honest Abe's ghost? If he wasn't with his widow, then where was he? In the Whitehouse, of course. Now, an important figure in perpetuating these stories was Jeremiah Jerry Smith, who, according to whitehousehistory.org, began working at the White House in the 1860s as a footman, in addition to becoming a butler, a cook, a doorman, and official duster.
Did he work his way up or down? Or was
I'm
that
not
in
sure.
a random order? Started at duster, ended at doorman.
Yeah, but official duster, that means there must have been several unofficial dusters stalking the halls
There's
of the
always
White
unofficial dusters hanging around the place.
Jeremiah Jerry Smith, or Double J to you and I, had somewhat loose lips and would happily speak to reporters on slow news days, often claiming to have seen the ghosts of several presidents and first ladies, most prominently Lincoln. In 1903, Jeremiah was first reported as a source in a newspaper article who had seen Lincoln, and that's 38 years after Lincoln's assassination. Now, before we get into the actual sightings, we should probably talk about where Lincoln is seen most commonly. Appropriately enough, you can find him in the Lincoln bedroom, which is a guest suite located in the southeast corner of the second floor of the White House. Originally, Lincoln's office, it was turned into a guest suite after the previous room, named the Lincoln bedroom, was turned into a dining room by Jackie Kennedy. The other place we can find Lincoln is in the Yellow Oval Room, a reception room just 2 doors down from the Lincoln bedroom. In between those two rooms is the Treaty Room, where President Kennedy signed the Partial Nuclear Test Ban Treaty in 1963 and has been used for signing important treaties ever since, That's not really of any relevance at all, but I went down a total rabbit hole looking at the layout of the White House.
I didn't know anything about what the White House looks like inside. Now I know a lot about what it looks like, so thank you for that, Chris.
So who was the next person to see Abe's ghostly mutton chops?
An unofficial duster.
Well, it's not clear exactly. Staff had consistently reported ghostly footsteps prior to and in the years following Lincoln's passing. He is not the only ghost that supposedly haunts the White House. The next recorded person to say they were aware of Lincoln's ghost was Teddy Roosevelt, who said, "I see him in different halls and rooms."
We don't have a great range for American accents. We have Southern and whatever this is. Oh my God, you guys, like, shut the fuck up. Abe Lincoln is in the fucking White House and he's been dead forever.
That is a much better Teddy Roosevelt impression than I just did.
Let's keep this.
So Teddy Roosevelt, when he said that he could see him in different rooms and halls, was seemingly speaking of Lincoln's ghost, but leaving just enough room of doubt that he could be talking about, feeling Lincoln's legacy in the halls of this building.
Well, like a very poetic description of it. Okay.
Grace Coolidge, the First Lady to the 30th President Calvin Coolidge, left no room for doubt. She was passing by the yellow Oval Room one day when she stopped dead in her tracks. There was the ghost of Lincoln, hands clasped behind his back, looking out over the Potomac River. Grace said she saw Lincoln
in black with a stole draped over his shoulders to ward off the drafts and chills of Washington's night air.
Oh, those drafts will be the death of you. That or being assassinated by a racist actor. Lincoln then vanished into presidential air.
Poof.
Many continued to feel Lincoln's presence over the years. Eleanor Roosevelt, First Lady of Franklin D. Roosevelt, felt that he would peer over her shoulder when she used the Lincoln bedroom as a study.
That is very spooky.
I'd like to interject just a dose of reality here. Obviously, Ghost Lincoln is 100% real. But if you spent the night in a room called the Michael Jackson Suite, who would you see as a ghost in the night?
Michael Jackson.
Hey, want to wake up and play games?
Sure, Michael.
Eleanor Roosevelt's aide, Mary Eben, actually reported physically seeing Lincoln, though. She said that much like Grace Coolidge, she'd been passing by a room, which in this case was the Lincoln bedroom, and she saw a tall and thin man perched on the edge of the bed, putting on his boots.
Sexy.
Her jaw hit the floor, and she burst into her office to tell everyone that she'd just seen a long dead president.
A long boy.
One of the most repeated features of Lincoln's hauntings appears to be a rapping at the door, as it appears in most of his nighttime appearances. So, if I may. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as some one gentle rapping at my chamber door. 'Tis some visitor, I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more.
'Tis a president, I muttered. That's a very, an old school, important white dude ghost thing to do. He's like, "Dad, I'm a ghost. Well, better go do some rapping."
I shall announce my presence. Either that or it's like Dr. Dre at the door. Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands, who was staying at the White House in 1942, whilst fleeing the Nazis, said that she had stayed in the Lincoln bedroom. Some claim it was the Rose Room, but they're very close to each other. She was awoken by a knocking at her door, and when she answered it, she found Lincoln dressed in a top hat and a frock coat, and after a beat, fainted on the floor.
That's terrifying. Like, imagine. But then he looks like a man, not a spectre. Right? Like a solid,
exactly
man. I don't know what I'd do.
Now, she actually doesn't mention him being in anything else but a top hat and a frock coat.
So he was Donald Ducking.
Presumably.
Naked from the waist down.
Now, the next day, she told Franklin D. Roosevelt and other guests at a cocktail party, much to their surprise, that Lincoln was still stalking the halls. William Churchill normally stayed in the Lincoln bedroom on his stays. It is, after all, reserved for visiting heads of state. One report, although not one that was ever officially confirmed, stated that Churchill had just finished taking a bath and was naked as the day he was born, save the cigar he was smoking.
What an image.
Linger on that image for a moment. Really think about it. When he noticed champion wrestler and sometimes President Lincoln suddenly appeared by the fireplace.
Sorry.
Churchill supposedly quipped, "Good evening, Mr. President. You seem to have me at a disadvantage." Now, if you'd like to hear what happened next, you can read my fan fiction over at Patreon.
That's a joke, but now I'm expecting it.
Churchill was, however, often found in the morning in the room across the hall and confessed that he'd once had a bad night in the Lincon bedroom, which is also the name of my fanfiction. Churchill himself was actually no stranger to ghosts and wrote a lengthy story recounting the time in his retirement that his father appeared to him while Winston was painting a picture of his father. Churchill never published the essay, but it was published posthumously. The pair go on to have a quite lengthy chat about some of the most mundane things imaginable, such as what OK means, and if the Carlton Private Members Club still exists. They also cover all of the major events of the 50 years since his father's death. The essay is a fascinating read, and it's likely not an actual counter, but a metaphor for Winston's political achievements and how he processed it and seeing himself as a failure in comparison to his father, who died at the age of 45, before Winston had even entered into politics. However, it's very interesting that he chose not to publish this account during his life. Was it actually out of self-reflection or fear that he would be mocked for this ghostly encounter?
A bit from column A and a bit from column B.
Now, I was going to do a bit here where we read some of The Dream by Churchill. It's freely available online, but it seems like you don't want to fuck with the Churchill archives when it comes to copyright. So moving swiftly back to Lincoln, President Harry S. Truman reported a mysterious rapping at his door one night. He wrote in a letter to his wife, Bess, "I see it in the old house." I don't know, like what, do northern accents exist?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of an actor.
"I see it in this old house." He's such a southern. Why is southern?
Do like a Tom Cruise. That's quite neutral.
"I sit in this old house all the while listening to the ghosts walk up and down the hallway. At 4 o'clock, I was awakened by 3 distinct knocks on my bedroom door. No one was there. Damned place is haunted. Sure as shootin'." Truman told his daughter, who later wrote in her biography of her father, that he hadn't any idea why Lincoln would still be in the White House, as he had no plans to haunt the place when he died. A true lazy man after my own heart.
I can't be bothered with this haunting bullshit. One life is enough.
Dwight D. Eisenhower actually physically saw the president in his most active state. As Eisenhower walked through the hallways of the White House, suddenly Lincoln rounded the corner and strode towards him in the opposite direction. The two passed each other, briefly locked eyes, and then never saw each other again. Eisenhower was quite open about this experience, frequently sharing it with staff members. Now, in movies, it's often animals and children who experience or sense ghost thirst. And in the White House, President Gerald Ford's daughter Susan would never sleep in the Lincoln bedroom, seemingly fearful of it, referring to it as that room. President Ronald Reagan's dog Rex would glare and growl at the room from a distance, and if brought close to it, he would bark incessantly, refusing to ever enter the room, even with his owners. Reagan told this story in a 1987 press conference, although he said he'd never actually seen Lincoln's ghost himself. In the 1980s, Tony Savoy, who was the White House operations foreman, reported seeing Lincoln sitting on a chair at the top of a flight of stairs. And in the 90s, during the Bill Clinton term, Bill actually had sexual relations with the ghost of Abraham Lincoln.
What?
Oh, sorry. No, it was Bill's brother Roger who claimed that he had felt Lincoln's presence when he stayed the night. Sorry. I did not have sexual relations with that Lincoln.
Can I just pause you for a second? Are you sure there isn't like a Lincoln cosplayer just...
Well, I would love it if this is the case.
There's a lot of unofficial dusters, unofficially on the books.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't they just dip into a room, put on a top hat? Like maybe they looked a bit like him. Those people look like people.
I think it would be... I love that as an idea, that there's I know one family of butlers who've been there since the Lincoln times, who've passed this mantle down over and over and over.
The Lincoln ghost, just cosplays the Lincoln ghost. They have a strict diet regime. They got to be like, if they're under height, they have to wear some like heeled shoe, and they have to learn the rapping techniques back at home. Like, this could be amazing.
Now, there were no reported sightings that leaked anyway in the Bush, Obama, Trump, or Biden administrations, which is odd because you think that Trump would definitely claim that Lincoln had appeared to him one night when he was unwrapping his 7th Big Mac.
I think he's probably just looking at himself in the mirror and really not ever caring if anyone else alive or dead is in the vicinity.
Probably didn't even know Lincoln was president.
He's like, who?
But Lincoln has been spotted outside of the White House. He's been seen at the theatre where he was assassinated. He's also in the house of the owner of that theatre. He's been seen around his grave in Illinois. He's been seen around a portrait of his wife, wherever it's displayed.
Oh.
And even as a phantom apparition on trains that use the same path that his funeral train did.
I like that one, a ghost on a train.
Maybe the reason why not every visitor to the White House sees him is because he's got quite a busy schedule.
Yeah, I mean, like, that may be why we only see ghosts now and again, because they're just like us. They're just en route to somewhere else.
I've regaled you with these stories of Lincoln's ghost, but what is actually happening here?
I told you, cosplaying Butler family tradition.
So that's one answer.
That's the answer, Chris. The answer. File closed.
But the other one is Lincoln really haunting the White House?
That's also another answer.
I mean, I see it as there's two ways to look at it, with the third one being this family of butlers who dress up as Abraham Lincoln. Yeah. But there's two ways. On one hand, as hinted at earlier, the power of suggestion is mighty. And as one would imagine, Lincoln might haunt the Lincoln bedroom. This is also where most visiting heads of state sleep. Combine this with the ever-growing narrative of Lincoln's apparition being president, and you've got yourself a tall tale there, boy. On the other hand, Lincoln lived a life of pain and sorrow, and even though he achieved many great things, he was still haunted by personal tragedy throughout his life. It's often said that Lincoln appears in the White House during times of national strife in the United States, and perhaps this pain draws out the spirit of Honest Abe. Personally, I like the theory that bricks or building material can act as a sort of tape recorder and play out events over and over again for the rest of time.
But I was going to say, Chris, Stendhal syndrome? White House syndrome? We've talked about Jerusalem syndrome. We've talked about Paris syndrome. Maybe people who visit the White House and, they're political people. It's much like a religious person going to Jerusalem. Is there a sort of Stendhal White House syndrome going on where you show up and you're like,
extremely localized to these two rooms. Yes.
Yeah, well, of course.
Yeah,
it's the
potentially.
room. It's the room. Could there be like a Lincoln's ghost syndrome?
There could be. I mean, that's a really interesting theory. I mean, you've got the power of suggestion. You've got the political history that surrounds all of those rooms in the White House. The fact that you are sleeping in a room that Lincoln existed in at some point
and
in the past.
Everyone who goes there is heavily involved in politics, running countries. So why? I mean, it's much like, if your favorite book is the Bible and you're a fanboy of Jesus, you go to Jerusalem, you get Jerusalem syndrome. Why not, go to the White House and get Abe Lincoln ghost syndrome? That's all I'm saying. Just putting it out there.
I mean, when you think about it, though, Lincoln is probably the most enduring figure in American history, as I understand it, as a British person.
Yeah, we all know who he is.
Yeah. If anybody was going to haunt the White House, it would probably be Abraham Lincoln. One thing's for sure, though, Honest Abe is certainly haunting the minds of the American consciousness, and he'll never be forgotten anytime soon. So we're likely to see more stories of Abraham Lincoln's hauntings in the future. But what do you think out there? Is Lincoln's ghost real? If so, what does he want? Have you seen his ghost? Were you also stark naked, save a lit cigar? Inquiring minds want to know.
And if you've seen his ghost, please DM us. Us about your experience. Have you been on a school trip to the White House?
Are you former President Barack Obama, who's listening to this?
Presidents listen to podcasts.
No, they have podcasts.
Oh, yeah. They have podcasts.
So thank you very much for listening to today's episode and listening to today's story of Abraham Lincoln and his ghost, What's Happening. But if you remember, if you cast your mind back to the beginning of this episode...
Oh, you gave me a crumb.
I give you a breadcrumb.
Yes.
Would you like the rest of a loaf?
Hell yeah.
So, Linz, I thought this would be an appropriate place to ask you a very important question.
You're looking at me in a way that I can't describe, and I don't know what that emotion is, and I'm scared.
Don't have emotions. We just wanted to ask you if you would like to be godmother.
Oh my God, yes! Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God, what do I do?
Godmother
Yes!
things.
Yes!
Excellent. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I just held him for the first time, the first baby I've ever held today, and it was an experience. It was so cute.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And on that note, thank you all for listening today for this episode of Dystopian Simulation Radio. Make sure you tune in next time when Linz is going to tell us another fascinating story. But check out our Instagram at d.s.radio. And if you're feeling really fancy, then you can check out our, I don't know what that means. If you
I like that. If you're feeling fancy.
If you're feeling fancy.
If you're feeling fancy.
Y'all can check out our Patreon, which is patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio. Hopefully we'll see you there. But until next time, bye.
Bye. Oh my God! What do I do?
Andre the Giant, who was great. It was a terrific time.